Hi everyone, I'm your host Matt Salem, and you've tuned in to another episode of Our Best Behavior, brought to you by Behaviorally. We are the global digital-first leader in defining and diagnosing human behavior to help you achieve the most valuable moment in marketing, when a purchase transaction occurs. We are Behaviorally, the transaction experts. Each episode, we share insights on trending topics within our industry and of interest to our customers. Today, we're joined by Adrian Sanger, VP AI Solutions, from here at Behaviorally. In this episode, we'll discuss AI and how it's become a hot topic in the insights industry. We'll explore its benefits, ethical considerations, advancements that AI brings, and its impact on personalized and professional experiences. Adrian, great to have you with us today. Thanks for joining.
Lovely to be back.
Yeah, this is what time are we up to here? 3, 4? You're like a regular on the show, I have to say.
3 or 4. Yeah, definitely 3 or 4. Definitely 3 or 4.
Love it. Love it. Well, it is good to have you, and I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time. I wanted to start our conversation and continue our series around AI with you being kind of the AI connoisseur at Behaviorally and asking you just about your generalized opinion on AI's impact on our industry so far, and really using that as kind of a springboard for further conversation today.
Well, look, Matt, I think it's had an absolutely transformative impact on our industry. But I just want to kind of set one thing straight. You know, AI didn't come along in November 2022, right? The launch of ChatGPT forced us all to pay attention. But, you know, AI has been around in various shapes and forms for quite some time, not only in our business lives, but in our personal lives too. You know, everything that we do pretty much on our smartphones, all those predictive texts, all this technology we have in our cars these days and in our homes. You know, AI has been driving that for some years now. We just got more and more interested in it with the launch of ChatGPT. So, you know, it's had a very significant impact. And, you know, I think it is really important, though, Matt, to break down the topic of AI into a few different parts, actually, because, you know, AI means different things to different people, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly in our personal lives, it can impact in ways that are different than in our professional lives. I mean, I've used AI in my personal life quite recently, leveraging Bing Chat just to give me some ideas for a potential itinerary on a weekend getaway that I had. And, you know, really did an excellent job. I asked it to categorize by places to eat, places to drink, places to do outdoor activities, and then mix them all together and make an itinerary for a day that was suitable for driving. And it really gave me some excellent recommendations, many of which I took up. And, you know, that's kind of on the personal side. On the professional side, I think we're really starting to see the impact of AI, both here at Behaviorally for our clients, certainly, but even internally as we begin to leverage AI to help gather some efficiencies for us for some of the tasks that are repetitive and redundant, where AI can come in and really help save time. And you know,
Right.
when it comes to our industry, I'd love to hear your views there.
Well, I mean, just kind of picking up the thread there, you know, I think it's been really significant what's happened. We've gone into overdrive in the last kind of 8 months, I think, since ChatGPT. I mean, some people have called kind of the launch of generative AI the kind of the automation of the knowledge industry, and I think that's quite a nice way of thinking about this topic, right? There's been automation throughout the decades, even the centuries, around manual work. But generative AI starts to get into some really interesting areas. You know, we talk about computer coding or copywriting or many, many thousands of other areas that previously we would have thought were kind of, you know, not vulnerable to advances in AI. And now suddenly we're having to reframe the way we think about AI. So a big jump forward, but a big jump forward, I think, in our industry as well, for, you know, the massive experimentation that we're seeing going on across our own company, Matt, but also across, you know, the industry more generally, as we're all picking it up and figuring out various ways in which we can make it work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, within behaviorally, we've certainly been a huge proponent of leveraging AI, and we've hosted quite a number of events around the world at this point, which really helps our clients to ignite their insights with AI. We've been joined by industry leaders from various CPGs and other businesses. We've had AI experts more specifically join us for some of these conversations that have taken place, and we were fortunate to have you participate in these events as well. You had quite a few pieces that you shared here in New York when I was lucky to be in attendance, but also elsewhere when we did our kind of same show, different location, if you will, in Europe, in Asia. And I was wondering, from all of these events, what did you see? What did you hear? What did you find maybe interesting or eye opening in talking with others?
Well, look, I went into those events believing that the pace at which things are changing is significant. But what I came out from those events, having learned, speaking to clients, speaking to folks that have got an opinion on this topic, is just a huge variety of use cases now for AI. I mean, we can talk about a couple of those if there's time. But one of the big kind of meta trends here is that pivot, which our colleague in keynote for New York and London, Ari Popper, talks about, which is this shift from using data and AI to measure stuff to starting to move towards a kind of intervention stance, most evidently in the area of kind of medical devices and kind of therapeutic interventions. But certainly that whole thinking around moving from being passive around recording facts to being able to go, well, look, given the sum totality of our knowledge in this topic, we're not just going to report the facts, we're also going to make a recommendation which is much more prescriptive in its nature. Yeah? In our own industry, that would be a suggestion of, what a future pack could look like, or what would be the design elements of that pack, using some of the image generation tools that are now available. But in adjacent spaces in consumer insight, it might be, more prescriptive around what that TV ad looks like, or more guidance around a kind of, a viral campaign, all sorts of ways in which using AI can turn the insight and more broadly the professional services industry from simple passive measurement into something much more useful, I feel. So I would say that's it. And I think linked to that is this real groundswell amongst industry professionals to get involved, to be energetic and to try things. And, although we've both been in the industry for quite some years now, Matt, it's still really inspiring to see that, to see, people doing that right around the world, and some of the huge successes they're having around that. So the energy as well as the change in focus, I think, from passive to active, I think are two very exciting and eye-opening things I'm seeing going on.
Yeah, and when I think about moving from passive to active, part of the conversation surely revolves around how much caution should we have when using generative AI to help in more of a strategic decision-making realm. And I was wondering if you had any conversations with guests on that as you kind of toured the world to bring our kind of AI insights to others.
Well, look, that is a great question, and I'm sure a question that a number of your listeners are thinking about right now. Generative AI typically, Matt, is not humble, right? And when you ask it questions that it doesn't know anything about, it is extremely confident and wrong in equal measure, and that's a risk, right? But if we think about that another way, when the internet first came along, we would Google something, and sometimes be kind of horrified that the answer that we would find on the internet was wrong. And this is no different, right? Large language models are scanning, the internet, and when the internet is wrong, generative AI will get the wrong answer too. So I think it's about trying to, mitigate for that. I see lots of efforts going on with, the likes of kind of Google and indeed Microsoft and many others, OpenAI themselves, to kind of close some of those gaps, to close the gap about recency, to try and address the very relevant questions around bias, which we may or may not have time to talk about today, but other blind spots as well, that make us less efficient in the way in which we interact with generative AI. For example, OpenAI are introducing just at the moment a kind of almost like a series of special instructions, right? So that every time you want to interact with ChatGPT, instead of reminding ChatGPT that, hey, you're Matt, you work for Behaviorally, you have this role in product development, yeah, and you host a podcast called Our Best Behavior, that's kind of locked and loaded, right? And then the generative AI will give answers that are framed in the context of what you need, with some intelligence around the way that data is served up. And I think that's a really, really kind of positive move. I think folks like Bing Chat that you mentioned earlier and Google Bard have also found various ways of addressing some of those blind spots. You talk about Bing earlier on, but the use of citations around some of the answers that Bing provide, I think, again, is very smart. It enables us to be much more choiceful about what parts we pick out from generative AI. So I think it's all moving in the right direction. But let's be clear, when things start up, again, as we said in some of our kind of AI events, they don't seem so promising, right? They seem sometimes like a very immature, almost a toy-like kind of thing with lots of problems. But so it was with early iterations of Google's search engine or Amazon's portal. They start somewhere and they just endlessly and ceaselessly improve that platform. And so that will be with generative AI. Yep, it's got problems at the moment, but those issues are being steadily and systematically addressed. And I'm confident, therefore, it will become a more and more valuable tool for us all.
And one thing you had raised a few moments ago and tied to some of the problems is this bias that can come with generative AI. And I remember even seeing stories many months ago, if not longer, about resumes being scanned and using it as a resume scanning tool, using AI, I should say, as a resume scanning tool. But when further or deeper look was given to the resumes that the AI picked to match what was needed, it seemed that there was bias entailed in terms of the demographics that it consistently picked, etc. Now, I'm sure some of that is attributed, if not most of that is attributed to the data that it was fed in order to learn what makes the best resume for the positions it was looking for. But I just use that as an example. And I wonder, do you think that there are kind of easier biases that can be addressed and fixed in the near term, low-hanging fruit, if you will, versus longer term, bigger picture issues that, the big companies of the world, Google, OpenAI, Microsoft, et cetera, are going to have to wrestle with for quite some time?
Look, I think this is both a short-term and a long-term issue, right? The fixes that are already within our view, as said, continue to move forward. The topic of applying AI to candidate resumes is not a new one, right? In fact, AI has been used to scan resumes now and look for keywords now for some years, in fact, and has been the subject of much comment on that. With a kind of almost like a game of cat and mouse, right? the AI will try to find the perfect mousetrap, and candidates will try to game that by figuring out what words they need to weave into their CVs in order to get through the system. It's something of a nonsense. But again, I go back to the central idea. AI is already offering us so much productivity around the speed and the scale that we can deliver in the projects that we work on. That while we don't want to be blind to those biases and those problems, neither do we want to be kind of overwhelmed by them, right? Because if we let that happen, it will be against us experimenting and progressing. And so I think the conversation really needs to be about how do we continue to educate ourselves about all of the different ways in which AI can be applied, and keep on improving our own skill set as insight professionals in a context where there is dynamic change going on. And I think that's a very big question, which keeps so many kind of clients and folks within our industry kind of wrestling about what is the future of our roles within this industry, and how will they change, as some of this technology becomes more present in the way we run our programs.
I want to pivot as we start to close out to what we're doing here at Behaviorally with AI, and moreover, where you think we can go in the future. Just in having conversations with clients, with colleagues, you hear a variety of ideas tied to how AI could be further leveraged. And right now, we're leveraging it to really unlock the power of the world's largest packaging database that we have. Where do you see it going in a year, 5 years? What kind of tools can potentially be available to our clients that helps them in ways that right now may not be on the table, but through the continued growth of AI and the continued learning and levels of accuracy that it will attain across a variety of subject matter. Nevertheless, if we tie in something closed like our database, where do you see it potentially going? What are some of the ideas that you have?
Well, look, let's take a quick kind of past, present, future perspective on that, just because I guess, all of us are coming from a kind of slightly different place on that. Like most organizations, we've been using AI for some while. It feeds the way in which we run our operations, and steadily it's been making us more efficient over time, taking out lots of jobs that previously required manual work. Those jobs are now automated. That's a steady stream of progress. Today we're applying AI, as you rightly say, across all of our tools, trying to help us with that whole area of analyzing data and, pattern detection, if you want to, through applying machine learning to our databases, so that we can make smart decisions with clients about, what is the best option from several, and we've got competing pack designs, competing digital commerces, but also leveraging the scale of these kinds of tools to be able to go, okay, well, apart from the A versus B decision, what do we need to understand about how this category works in terms of its visual assets, so we can drive more meta learning. And why is meta learning important? Well, why my meta learning is important is because, that helps us to do things right more often at source. And when we do that, that makes us all more efficient and all more productive. So past and present is that. In terms of the future, well, I hinted earlier on that I really see a future that involves us as an industry being more kind of confident and assertive around the recommendation that we want to make. Here is 3 suggestions for, given the learnings that we've got from this study, you might want to think about evolving your pack design. And again, not to take away the kind of creative process, but to be a further catalyst to that creative process. And one other thing, I think more and more, AI will help us to manage the content that we already have, right? So we have companies out there like Market Logic and Stravito that have been very good at codifying vast amounts of market research reports, etc., and helping clients to more easily kind of access that. And we need to do that to ourselves, right? We have over the last decades published a lot of thought leadership around e-commerce, around packaging, around sustainability. But sometimes that can be a real job, can't it? To find your way through it, an ebook, a flip book, a blog, finding your way to that, that killer content is quite tough. So we are generating our own kind of GPT bot that allows our clients to simply ask the bot questions, and it will use generative AI to scour all of our kind of behaviourally sources, it's the website and our thought leadership, etc., to give an answer that really saves a huge amount of time and wading through all of that content that we've generated to get the answer that they're seeking for, and only that answer. And so we're putting quite a lot of effort into how we're delivering those insights, and how generative AI can help with the ongoing recycling of those insights, both for our clients and for teams that are learning, joining the company, onboarding, skilling up, wanting to learn about a new area, all of those sorts of things. It's far easier for folks to engage with a kind of GPT interface, just like you've been doing for your vacation ideas, than it is to wade through a library of different thought leadership. So it's what we do, how we are more assertive in our recommendations, and how we deliver our thought leadership out through various channels. And I think the future is all of the above.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, when you think about the vast amount of information that we've collected over the years, there's probably risk of learning the same thing multiple times, if that makes sense, right? As time goes on, you're seeking to learn something that there's a chance that has been learned in the past, perhaps through a proxy of sorts, but common principles can be unearthed much more easily with AI, which can really help elevate the learning that we can glean from any given individual study.
Exactly right.
So with that, I always like to end on somewhat of a fun note. Some may argue how fun it is, but you mentioned a behaviorally bot. I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you top 3 naming considerations, much to the chagrin of marketing, who will ultimately probably name our behaviorally bot. Maybe it'll be called behaviorally bot. But if not, what's its name?
What's its name? Well, I mean, my favourite name for it is something short and snappy. Right here on this front screen, we've got that big letter B. I think probably all the viewers and listeners to your podcast can see that standing nice and proud there. So, to my mind, the best name here would be something like B-bot, right?
That's where my head's at.
It's behaviourally, and it's bot, it's B-bot. It's very simple, and it's one of those names that kind of does what it says on the tin. So to kind of pivot to your more your broader question about what should we be thinking about, well, something that sticks, right? If it's a sticky name, then it kind of lasts. If we call it the behaviourally GPT bot as an alternative, I guarantee nobody's going to remember that, and probably that does the product a disservice. So more so than anything else, I would say keep it short and snappy.
I love it. We'll go with just the number 1, B-bot. That's where my head was at, actually. So we got 2 votes for B-bot. Let's see how that works out in the future.
That sounds good.
Well, Adrian, as always, appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you spending some time with me. Once again, for our audience, thank you for tuning into Our Best Behavior, brought to you by Behaviorally. And with that, we'll catch you next time.